Hey everyone, and welcome back. If you've watched any top-tier football recently, you've probably noticed a seismic shift. The game is faster, more intense, and relentlessly demanding. Gone are the days of leisurely build-ups and defensive solidity as the primary focus. Modern football managers, from Klopp to Guardiola and Alonso, have embraced a philosophy of non-stop tactical pressing and extremely high defensive lines. It's exhilarating to watch, no doubt, but there's a dark side that's often overlooked, the unprecedented toll it's taking on the very athletes who make the beautiful game possible. This hyper-athletic tactical shift is actively causing physical burnout and career-threatening injuries among our world-class players. So, what exactly is this high-line pressing we're talking about? At its core, it's an aggressive, proactive defensive strategy. Instead of dropping back and waiting for the opponent, a high-pressing team pushes its defensive line much further up the pitch, often near the halfway line. The goal? To win the ball back as high up as possible, ideally in the opponent's half, and then immediately transition into attack. It's about suffocating the opposition, forcing turnovers in dangerous areas, and dictating the tempo from the first whistle. This system demands constant energy and synchronized movement from every single player on the pitch. For managers, the high press is like a super weapon. It's seen as the tactic that powers elite clubs like Manchester City and Liverpool, often forcing opponents into mistakes high up the pitch. Statistical data from the 2024-25 season, for example, shows that teams in the top half often shift their entire block to lock the opponent into a small corner of the pitch. This tactical suffocating forces turnovers in incredibly dangerous areas, setting up quick scoring opportunities. Jurgen Klopp's Dortmund famously used gegenpressing to overcome Real Madrid's quality gap in the 2012-13 Champions League, proving its effectiveness even against technically gifted teams. But to truly have an effective high press, you need a very specific type of player, especially in midfield. These are your engine room players, those who can win the ball back with relentless intensity. Think about Eduardo Camavinga and Aurelien Tchouameni at Real Madrid. Camavinga ranks in the 94th percentile for tackles won among other midfielders, while Tchouameni reads plays at an elite level, ranking in the 91st percentile for interceptions. Prior to a Clasico, Tchouameni was even first in the Big Five leagues for interceptions. These players are invaluable, but to be effective in a press, they need to be positioned higher up the pitch, constantly running and engaging. And this brings us to the biggest problem with this system: sheer exhaustion. An analysis from back in 2014, when the high press was still evolving, already highlighted tiredness as the #1 issue. It takes an incredible amount of running and energy to sustain this pressing for 90 minutes. Imagine needing to sprint, close down, and recover position almost constantly, match after match, week after week. It's a relentless demand on the cardiovascular system and muscular endurance. Players are essentially running a high-intensity interval training session for the entire game, and then being asked to do it again just a few days later. It's simply unsustainable. Beyond the physical drain, the high press is also a high-risk strategy, which means players are constantly under pressure to make the correct choices. Any weakness creates opportunities for the opponent and can quickly throw the pressing team out of alignment, making them susceptible to quick counter-attacks. An organized press often looks to target players weak in possession, forcing them to pass the ball and quickly closing down space with disciplined pressure. Even when executed well, this is a relatively high-risk strategy that requires the participation of the entire team, who must press in sync with one another and adopt a high defensive line at all times. The mental stress of maintaining this perfect alignment is immense. One of the main weaknesses of a high press is directly tied to player exposure. A high defensive line leaves plenty of space in behind. This space can, in theory, be exploited through long balls and quick forward runs. Overcommitting forward players, which is essential for the press to work, only increases this risk, leaving the entire defense exposed. The Titans Football Academy explains that the high press can leave the entire team out of position, creating vulnerabilities. It's a constant tightrope walk between winning the ball high and preventing a direct attack on your goal, and the margin for error is razor thin, putting immense pressure on individual defenders. Another critical vulnerability for pressing teams, and a significant burden on players, is the space between the defensive and midfield lines. When a team jumps into a high-pressing phase, their midfielders push up to compress space behind the front line of the press. This naturally opens up a weakness, a gap between the defense and midfield. Opponents can exploit this by shifting a far-sided player, often a central midfielder, into this space to create a free player. Filling this gap is a constant, high-energy requirement for the remaining midfielders or even retreating forwards, demanding an incredible amount of positional awareness and repeated sprints. For a high press to truly work, it demands an almost robotic level of synchronization and discipline. FIFA Training Center highlights that maintaining a compact team shape is crucial. This means players must be in closer proximity, making it harder for the attacking team to play through central channels. But achieving this compactness and pressing in sync requires immense tactical understanding from every player. One misplaced step, one delayed run, and the entire structure can collapse, leaving the team vulnerable. This adds a huge mental load on top of the physical demands, as players must constantly be aware of their teammates' positions and movements. It's interesting to note how this translates even to virtual football, which can sometimes reflect real-world tactical challenges. On Reddit, players discuss how applying pressure manually is often superior, and using AI to apply pressure can lead to positioning mistakes that attackers exploit. In real football, there's no AI to cover for you. Each player is the AI, constantly making decisions in real time under extreme physical duress. This means every individual needs to be good enough to apply pressure manually, precisely, and consistently for 90 minutes. That's a staggering expectation, and any lapse due to fatigue can be fatal, which, again, puts even more pressure on the players. When executed perfectly, a high press is a thing of beauty. 442 describes how, at its best, a well-executed high press can absolutely suffocate opponents with the ball. They have no time to think, no space to operate, and are constantly forced into hurried decisions. It's like being trapped in a mental and physical vice. This aggressive approach aims to create chaos for the opposition, turning the game into a frantic, high-stakes sprint. But the very effectiveness of this suffocation comes at a steep price for the players themselves. To be the suffocator, you must first be capable of relentless, high-intensity effort. Now, it's worth noting that not every single player on a top team is pressing massively. Discussions on Reddit, for example, question if every player is demanded to help massively in defense. Some elite players, often those with exceptional offensive talent like a Ronaldinho in his pomp, might have slightly less defensive responsibility to conserve energy for attacking moments. However, this exception for a few star players only exacerbates the problem for everyone else. If a few players are allowed to conserve energy, the remaining players must work even harder, covering more ground and executing more sprints to maintain the overall pressing structure. It's an unequal burden that contributes to burnout. The rise of high-pressing tactics marks a significant evolution in modern European football. Managers like Klopp, Guardiola, and Alonso have undeniably contributed to making it a dominant strategy, reshaping space, intensity, and even player roles. They've shown it's a powerful weapon that can win titles. But this tactical advancement comes at a steep, often unseen, price. The players are the ones bearing the brunt of this evolution, pushed to their absolute physical and mental limits every week. We're witnessing a game where strategic brilliance is inadvertently shortening the careers of its most valuable assets. So, let's compare that risk versus reward equation from the player's perspective. For managers, the reward is titles and success. For players? They get the glory, sure, but the risks are profound. They're constantly pushed to their physical breaking point, incurring a higher risk of muscle strains, ligament tears, and chronic fatigue. The Deep Dive High Press Explained, Risk vs Reward notes that while elite teams use pressing to win the ball high, they also face significant risks when opponents break the press. For players, this means not only the physical output but the mental anguish of constantly being on the edge of failure, leading to more injuries and shorter careers. Modern football has essentially transformed into a high-risk endurance test. It's not just about skill anymore, it's about who can maintain the highest intensity for the longest period. This isn't just about individual sprints, but about sustained periods of high-intensity activity, followed by insufficient recovery time before the next match. The cumulative effect of this over a season, and then over multiple seasons, is staggering. We are asking players to perform at an elite athletic level that might be pushing the very boundaries of human physiology, sacrificing their long-term health and career prospects for short-term tactical gains and immediate results. So, where do we go from here? It's a complex issue. Managers want to win, and high-pressing tactics are undeniably effective. But at what cost? There's a growing conversation to be had about player welfare, fixture congestion, and the need for more intelligent squad rotation. Perhaps a more hybrid approach, as discussed in The Space Between, Evolutions in the Hybrid Press, which carefully balances pressing intensity with periods of controlled possession or a mid-block, could offer some respite. The beautiful game shouldn't come at the cost of its most beautiful assets. We need to find a way to preserve the magic of modern football without burning out the magic makers.